Hello, whoever is here yet. Not anybody just yet. So I'm so excited today to be with Dr. Sharon Saline and talk about her 12 great ideas on how to help our autistic young adults get things done. I just am amazed by her experience, both professionally and personally, and her incredible production of blog posts and videos at YouTube that everyone can watch for free. She just gives so much away. And then she wrote a book that has sold now over 40,000 copies, What Your ADHD Child Wishes You Knew. So, a combination of all of her education and her experience working with alternative learners has really made her an incredible expert on the types of help, the supports that our autistic young adults need. And can't wait, there we are. There's Sharon. Hold on, let me make her a presenter. There we go. So here she comes. And we have Vanessa. Welcome. Glad you're here already. I'm so glad you tuned right in. So let's just wait to see who else can join us. But, like I said, I'm just psyched that I get to work with Dr. Saline on this presentation. So I might just put a little bit of chapstick on the old. There we go. And hopefully Sharon is there, but I'm sure she's just, getting her tech right, just like I had to get mine right, the cameras and all. So when this is over, you will get a link to the replay video. And then in a couple of days, I'm hoping by Sunday, I will have transcribed. In fact, let me turn this on because I forgot to do that right now. I'm going to transcribe right now our presentation. And so that way you can also read it. And I'm going to do that. I always add headings and titles, and like there's an outline on the side of the transcript so that you can easily get to the parts of the presentation that mean the most to you. So I'm excited about that, and I will be sending you a link to that as well. I also this week, Wednesday, I did a recap of Dr. Saline's 12 ideas at the Art of Adulting. And it was my take on what I've learned from her and how that dovetails with what we do at the Art of Adulting course coaching and community. So here comes Dr. Saline. I'm thrilled that we get to work together today. So when I send you that transcript, it's going to be in there. Hi, Dr. Saline. Oops, I can't hear you. Darn it. What's going on?
Hi.
And I'm so thrilled you're here. Vanessa's already with us.
Thank you. Nice. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for all of your just incredibly warm and lovely comments and posts. And I'm just so touched, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
I cannot tell you how much I admire you. You are my shining beacon out there of where I want to go over time, because of how you're so prolific, writing blog posts and producing videos. And all of that, though, is so helpful because what you do is you find the right words to help explain these concepts. And you give me a selection of them sometimes, which is helpful because, sometimes it's the way in and other times it's not the way in. You got to come up with another option. So It's just lovely to be able to to learn so much from you and then translate that into how I help the people that I coach.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's wonderful. And I work a lot with emerging adults, and
Hmm.
so it's great to collaborate with you. In fact, I did a webinar on Wednesday called Beyond High School, which I saw that you promoted. Thank you.
And
And
I bought it.
thank
So,
you.
yeah.
And the people who attended asked me if I would please do that workshop for their kids. So maybe
Yes.
that's something that we could. Um,
Oh, what fun that would be.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to do that, and then uh, I'll let you know when I am, because it seems like that would be right up the alley of the people you work with. So.
Oh, definitely. And I had to figure this out because we have 6 kids and three,
Mhm.
well, several are autistic and all of them are alternative learners. And thank you for that terminology, alternative learner, because it really does encapsulate just the fact that we have some brain differences going on. They're normal variations on the brain.
Mhm.
I mean, there's 7.9 billion people in the world. Did we not think that there was going to be some variation here?
Right. Exactly, exactly. And I don't like the term. I mean, and kids themselves, adults even, no one wants to have a disorder,
Gosh,
and so, develop, whatever it is, you know, um,
yeah, yeah,
nobody really wants to use that name or that verbiage. And so I think, alternative learner is actually, it's just kinder. It's like, yep, I learn in different ways, you know.
yeah. And I think that all of us, there's, I know that I learn better a certain way. Some of the people I work with need another way. And I don't know what, I know that the labels are just part of being human because it helps us to, make sense of the world.
Hmm.
I get that. And of course, the insurance companies need that,
Yes, they
for their
do.
diagnoses. And
Right.
so I get that. And yet I do find that when we paint people with those broad brushes, that we really miss the beauty of the variances that we have as
Hmm.
humans.
I think that's so true. And what I notice is that we want the diagnosis for the medical model. That's all. And
Mhm.
we want to be able to, get whatever services are linked to that diagnosis. But I think it's important for people to be able to name their own brain. How does
Yes.
your brain work? Like I have a worried brain, or I have a worry. I, Sharon, have a worry brain. Like, my brain is anxious. And so I own that.
So good to
And,
know.
rather than pretend that, or wish that I were one of those people who are just really like bright eyed and whatever happens is great, I'm just not that way. Like, I'm just not that way. And so we want to move toward an ability to have compassion toward ourselves
Yes.
and accept
First
who we
step
are.
right there. First step.
That's right. And if we are very busy, you know speaking, living, acting out of the disorder, then we're not actually offering ourselves the opportunity to act out of the happy, joyful,
Mm.
creative parts of ourselves. And because that voice then becomes louder than the other parts.
Because our brain tends toward the negative, and that's why it amplifies it.
That's exactly right. And I mean, I think that that doesn't mean we're going to ignore it and we're going to pretend
No.
it's not happening. What we're going to do instead is to say, yes, and.
Yes. And not
Yes,
yet, but
and.
I'm going to get there.
Yes, I'm an anxious person,
Yes.
and that leads me to being very productive because I get a lot done. Or yes, I struggle with time management, because I think I can do more in a given amount of time than I'm actually able to do. So that means that, yes, I have
Right
a big
there.
appetite and I like to do a lot and I can get a lot done, and I might overcommit.
Yeah.
So we want to be able to really work from that yes and. Yes, I'm this and that.
I love that. The yes and formula. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Because all of my, all of our six adult children, we love all the way down to their toenails. And once we figured out where they are, then we can meet them there.
Correct. We wanna meet our kids where they are, and that's I think is that on one of the 12 things? It may not be, but we want to meet our kids where they are rather than where they think they should be. And I think that this is really a challenge for all of us parents,
Yes.
whether we are parenting neurotypical or neurodivergent kids. Um, we want to be able to we have to be able to put aside the things that we think should be this way or the advice that we have and let our kids figure it out. And I'm going to tell you, I have two adult kids. One is 23 and has really struggled, was in college during the pandemic
Yeah.
and got depressed. And one of them is 27 and just had a baby, so that was their choice. He wanted to have a baby with his wife. Had you know, a wedding that was very, very small with him and the wife and the chaplain and the dog. And then we took them out for dinner. So there was a whole adaptation for me as
Mhm.
Jewish mother. I'm like, what? We're not having
Mhm.
a wedding? Are you kidding? So,
Mhm.
but no wedding, you know, no after party, that's their choice. And that took grieving. And I think that's kind of what I
Yes.
want to say, right? Like we
Right.
have to it's about we have this expectation or this hope and then it may not occur and that's on us,
Yes.
right?
That's our imagined future that we
Mhm.
have to mourn. And I learned that when our daughter, one of our daughters passed. And what was she right before her second birthday in 1988. And this has been a while ago, but the pain of letting go of the imagined future I had with her.
Mhm.
I had pictured us going to kindergarten and then, all the
Mhm.
things. And I had to let go of all of that. And I'm so grateful, to her for many, many reasons. And I try to honor her memory by learning the lessons and then applying them forward in my life. So
Mhm.
that's the way that I frame up letting go of the future.
Mhm.
And
And
that's
that's such a That's a
real.
huge deal, and it's a huge loss,
Yes.
and I only wanna say, if you were here, I'd give you a big hug. Like, I can't imagine that
Mm,
kind of pain and grief. Um, I said I'm Jewish, and in Judaism, when someone dies, we say, "May their memory be a blessing." And
well, her
clearly her
grandmother was
memory.
Jewish, so they adopted our family as because mine lived so far away. So Esther was and Manny were our
So
grandparents.
and clearly your daughter is a blessing for you,
Oh
and
yeah,
and her memory is a blessing.
and that's
Um,
how I try to honor her is in that way.
mhm,
I really,
and
by
yeah,
learning the lessons and applying them as I can now.
mhm.
So it is, oh my gosh, how did that happen? It's already 12 o'clock. And I just want to take a moment here to ask you this question. Would you like to know the best way to encourage your autistic young adult to get things done? And if you're answering yes, I have great news because that is exactly what we will discuss today. So I'm thrilled that to to that that our guest is going to explain her 12 great ideas. And trust me, she has many more than 12. But we're just at this point able to cover those 12 about getting stuff done. And that's by improving executive functioning skills by collaborating and harnessing grit, which is so cool. So I'm Lynn Davison. I'm an adulting coach. I help autistic young adults and their families systemize adulting together. And I'm just thrilled to bring to you these kinds of guests who just know so much and have such practical knowledge, like on how it really can be done. So, our guest specializes in helping alternative learners manage their attention, anxiety, learning, and mental health challenges. She's got the whole picture here. With over 25 years of clinical experience, she brings a positive, strengths based approach that we wish all of our children could have. Thank you for being here, Dr. Sharon Saline.
Thank you so much for having me and for that beautiful introduction. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So here's the thinking is that I was introduced to Dr. Saline through the Executive Functioning Online Summit. And what I did was I put together a PDF of her that summarized the 12 great ideas that she presented there. And then I brought in some of the additional writing and videos that she's created. And I have that as a gift to everybody that attends. So
Hmm.
I'm so excited to get that to you. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over her 12 great ideas that I summarized in that document. So the first one we're going to start on is, focus on what's working and enhance it, which is a great way to get started.
It's so important because I think a lot of times as parents, we zoom in on what's not working
Yeah.
and we want to fix A and B and C and improve all of those areas. And it's overwhelming for kids. And so we want to sort of approach change with some more balance. Um, One of the things that's so important in developing a growth mindset, which is critical for alternative learners, is to be able to know what you're good at and to lean into those strengths to balance out the parts of yourself that you think, oh, I'm not really that good at this thing. So we want to help our kids and work with them to identify, something that they really love. What do they think they're really good at? What brings them joy? And make sure that's in their daily life, and then focus on one or two or three. I encourage you to stick to one or two, not more. Um, Areas, one, exactly one, you can only change one thing at a time, that you'd like to see improved. And then when that kind of gets underway for a couple months, usually about 3 months, when you start to see, okay, look, that's coming along. There's some repetition, there's routine, very important for teaching a new skill. Patience, repetition, routine, patience. Then you can say, okay, that needs a little bit less support. We could add perhaps something else in.
I just watched a video explaining the domino effect, that one domino can knock over the next domino that's one and a half its times its weight and size. And then the next
Mm,
one then can knock over the next one. And so
mm-hmm,
that's why I believe that starting with just one and having the
mm-hmm,
success, then you'll start to have the domino effect where the little domino, it only takes like 40 times before the biggest domino is the size of the distance between here and the moon. I mean,
right.
really the potential is unlimited, but when we start with the one thing at a time and get some success there, then we all feel confident that we can continue.
Absolutely. And we want to remember that these alternative learners are often kids who feel overwhelmed
Oh yeah.
very easily. And so if they're feeling overwhelmed, why do we want to add more things into into the experience? Like they're already like, oh, I'm struggling, and particularly for kids who have slower processing speed,
Yes.
um, and the cognitive assessments, the assessments that are done for testing, for psychological testing, psychoeducational testing, will often reveal different factors of 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 cognition. And
Yeah.
processing speed is one of them. And for kids whose processing speed is lower than other factors like verbal comprehension or visual and perceptual reasoning or fluid reasoning, we want to remember that their experience is one where information comes in and it takes them longer to sort it into the place it has to go. One of my clients said to me, it's like this, Dr. Sharon. the file comes in my brain and the papers go everywhere. And I start to pick up those papers. And then the next file comes in my brain and those papers go everywhere. And then the next file comes in my brain and those papers go everywhere. And I'm still working on the papers from the first file.
Such a wonderful description of what it
Right?
feels like.
Yes.
Ah, and so then we can have that compassion because
Hmm.
we've all felt overwhelmed. And
Exactly.
yeah, and so by slowing things down and, taking one step at a time, it's really the
Mhm.
approach that works.
It is.
So talk about the brain some more because, yeah, processing speed, working memory, all that stuff comes from
Mhm.
the way the brain came together.
Right, so the brain develops from the back to the front and the inside out. The
Right.
back of the brain is our physiological brain. It's often called the reptilian brain because we
Mhm.
share it with reptiles, and it's the oldest part of our brain. And this part of the brain has to do with, blood pressure and heart rate and breathing. And some people, there's some kind of discussion about whether the amygdala, the ability, that the and the relationship to cortisol is part of that brain, or if it's part of the middle part of the brain, which is the often called the emotional brain or the
Mhm.
mammalian brain, because
Mhm.
the amygdala is actually seated in this part of the brain in the limbic system. But what happens is that information will be processed, particularly in a dangerous situation. Information will be processed there first
Yes.
before the thinking brain, the cognitive brain, the human brain can actually you kind of grasp what's going on. And that's because that part of our brain is what keeps us alive. That's part of our brain launches fight, flight, or freeze.
Mhm.
And so, what we see, and particularly in kids with ADHD, we see this research that the connections from the prefrontal cortex to the rest of the brain happen more slowly. The
Uh,
myelination process, the connectivity, with a lag of up to about 3 years. And for kids who are on the autism spectrum, it can be 2 years or more.
yeah.
So we want to remember that these are kids who have a biological brain difference.
Yes.
Now, executive functioning skills develop. They don't develop in a linear fashion. It can be two steps forward and one step back. You'll make progress. You'll see a lot of progress in one area and then a regression, or regression. Or while there's that progress, there could be a regression in another because there are, depending on who you ask, 11 to 12 executive functioning skills. There's general agreement that the last executive functioning skill, which is called metacognition, but I refer to it as a self evaluation. It's called self awareness. It has lots of names, but generally, it's the ability to think about your thinking, and it's the ability to sort of grasp the entirety of a concept of a situation, and make a decision, and make a decision based on your understanding of the various consequences. This ability, metacognition, while we can develop it, we start in young childhood. Like, how do you think you're doing, and what do you think you could do, you might be able to apply in the situation. It's the last part of the brain to actually coalesce
And
around age 25 in neurotypical brains
at least.
and closer to 28 in those with ADHD.
And it's kind of a miracle that we have this brain here, right? And then we're
Yeah,
able to look at the brain working. Evolutionarily,
right.
that's a
R-
miracle.
It is. And that's what metacognition is. And that's what our frontal lobes do, is they allow us to think about ourselves and to think about our thinking. And so it's incredible. And it takes time to develop it. I mean, I'm working with someone right now, and I met with his parents yesterday. And you live with someone every day, you don't always see this. But I said, like, I'm thinking about where he is now compared to where he was a year ago, and where he is now, at 15 versus where he was, last year at 14 is he's able to talk about, this is what's going on in my brain all the time and I don't like it.
Wow.
I'm like,
What
okay,
wonderful
let's
awareness.
spend,
That's
right?
cool.
I know. I said, let's spend 2 minutes. Tell me everything you're thinking.
Yeah.
And boom. And, I thought if I was living in that brain, I'd be exhausted because it never stops. It's
No, it
bouncing all
doesn't.
over the place.
I
And
know.
he says, and that's a problem for me in school because I'm smart and I
Mhm.
can't do the things I want to do.
Mhm.
I said to the parents, I said, I don't think you have any idea how much growth has happened in 1 year for him to be able to say that. And they're like, really? Like, yes.
At that age, yes.
But,
Yes.
he's been in therapy now with me for 2 years. And
Yep.
so he's learned, to think about his thinking
Oh,
and to perceive himself. His self-awareness is blossoming, and it's confusing
mhm.
at the same time.
Mhm. Well, imagine how much better he's gonna, how much more growth there is ahead of him and how much better he's gonna be able to solve his own problems over time, even if
Right,
we're gone. You know,
right,
this
exactly.
right there, that's the gift that we give them when
Yeah,
we have them work with people who can help make that happen.
and
So
they can name things.
yeah, and name things. Yes. So that goes right into the pills don't teach skills. I'm on Facebook, many Facebook pages that support parents with autistic kids, and often
Mhm.
which drug do which prescription do you prescribe? And I'm very much pro using whatever tools we have. So if it's a miracle that we have these, pharmaceutical tools, at the
Mhm.
same time, it's really helpful if we pair that with the skills.
Well, what's interesting is that research shows that about 50% of kids whose primary diagnosis is ASD have ADHD. But if your primary diagnosis is ADHD, about 14% of those kids have a secondary ASD
Mhm.
diagnosis. And then, we get into the twice exceptional kids.
Yes.
Um, and, that's about 0.5% of the young population. But 9% of twice exceptional kids also have learning disabilities.
Yes.
So, and the twice exceptional statistics are, have such a wide range of who's what and who has these strengths and these challenges. But overall, medication can help kids integrate and retain
Mhm.
skills and manage themselves more effectively. They can help with self-regulation. But
Mhm.
it's not necessarily going to teach you how to use a planner. It might help you with the more unconscious skills of focus,
Yeah.
working memory, um, or guiding your attention to where you want it to go. But it's not necessarily going to help you figure out, once you do your brain dump of all the things you have to do, what's most important. And so that's where we need to have collaboration with adults. Interestingly, there's a study that came out of the University of Pennsylvania that showed that kids who are diagnosed, whose primary diagnosis is ASD, and have um, symptoms, significant symptoms of ADHD, but don't perhaps meet the criteria for a full diagnosis. When they are given stimulants, it helps with both the symptoms of ADHD and autism,
Yeah. And
which is
figuring that
interesting.
out is in our family at least has is a there's just a constant improvement process going on there because sometimes they get side effects from them, and then we have to figure out what's a different route and what's it's the chemical soup isn't always the same, and it's
No,
definitely
and the
a child, definitely.
I
Yeah.
was I was just having a conversation with someone about this, a psychiatric nurse prescriber, and I said, the problem with psychiatry is it's not a science.
No,
It just because you can't like have a blood test, it can't
right.
tell you what you need. You can't have an MRI of your brain and say, okay, this is what's going to work. It's. She said, you're right. It's an art.
Yeah.
We take the scientific
Right.
information that we have and we apply it to this person in this situation. And it's very frustrating to
Hmm.
be the subject of that artist.
Hmm.
you know? Like,
It's an
I don't wanna
experiment.
try anymore. I don't
Yeah.
wanna be experimented on, you
Mm.
know? I hate this. And,
Mhm.
it's
It makes sense
terrible.
to me. I don't like, I watch it happen, and I watch, and when you mess with, I had it, took a antidepressant for more than a decade, and then it started giving me an abnormal heart rate. It raised it and my blood pressure, so I had to go
Mm,
off of it, and I was worried that I was going to get depressed again once I came off of it. But it took me a year to get off of a very low dose of it, and that
mm,
my brain had to adjust to not having that chemical. So it took a year, more sleep and exercising every day, and managing my mind through using a steer map, which is what I advocate is
mhm,
a great tool in my course. And I've watched my children also, when they move from one medication to the other, anxious to
mhm.
try the new one, but you can't go so fast sometimes.
Right, and that's the thing, like, these chemicals are very powerful.
Yes, they are. And like you said, we don't know a lot about them.
No.
No, we're just experimenting right now. But I'm so glad we have them, because they've made a difference in my kids' lives. They really have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing to
It is.
live at this time in our lot in society in society in culture to have these options, but it's also complicated.
Yep. So let's do the next one, and then we're going to pause and welcome everybody and see what questions they have. So the 5 C's: self control, compassion, collaboration, consistency, and celebration. These are from your book, What Your
Hmm.
ADHD Child Wishes You Knew.
Yes. So what I want to say about the 5 C's is, I interviewed a number of kids, over 3 dozen kids, and and their parents. And what I found is that kids feel like they want parents to manage themselves first, because they struggle so much
Yes.
themselves with self-regulation, that if you are as a parent are dysregulated, they feel like, how am I going to manage myself? And part of the problem is that when kids are dysregulated, they often export their feelings onto their parents, who then import them and get more agitated, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, the
so
blame
self
game
control.
goes around and around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So self-control is really being able to, notice what's going on with you and regulate yourself first, which is the hardest thing. And I recommend that if you're feeling activated or you're feeling triggered, go to the bathroom, close the door, and wash your hands,
Wash
put
your
some
hands.
water in your face, or just like close the lid to the toilet and sit down and look at a magazine for 2 minutes.
Right.
Um, Whatever's happening on the other side of the door will still be there when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
done, including kids banging on the door, "Come out, when are you coming out?" And that sort of thing.
Mom.
Um, "Mom, I need you now," and, that will give you a chance to be with yourself, because kids know that parent people go to the bathroom by themselves.
Right. Such a great strategy. Just go to the bathroom.
Just go to the bathroom. And then the second C, I'll move quickly. The second C is compassion, which is we talked about meeting our kids where they are, not where that we think they should be, and practicing self-compassion, because we, like our kids, are doing the best we can in a given moment with the resources we have available to us.
Yes.
Collaboration, working with our kids for solutions to challenging
Yes.
issues rather than imposing what we think it should be. Even young children have some ideas about how to solve a problem, or
Yes.
to create a routine or do something. We don't have to do everything they say, but if you can incorporate some piece of what they want into whatever plan or activity you're creating, you're going to do better, because they will have buy-in
Yep. And that's what Ross Green promotes on his website,
all
Live
the
with
time,
Balance.
all the
And it's
time. Yes, all the
wonderful,
time,
that whole
all the time.
process. Yeah.
And then what we want to talk about is consistency. This is not perfection. This is meeting people where they this is not about perfection, excuse me, it's about steadiness. It's about what I call efforting. And someone recently called me out and is like, "I can't believe you made up a word. I have lost all respect for you because you've made up a word." And I was like, "Wow, dude, like you need to do something else with your time." And efforting is a word that I created particularly for neurodivergent people because it's more than just trying.
Yes,
Trying is, I'll give it a shot.
right.
Efforting is what neurodivergent people have to do when they attempt something because it's not just, I'll give it a shot. It's, I got to get all my executive functioning skills. I got to pay attention. I got to deal with my body and
Mhm.
my psychology, my emotions, my EF skills. Like that's what efforting is. And
And
it's
will
not just
over and over again. It
over and over.
doesn't happen
Exactly.
like that. It just doesn't happen fast. Most
No, it
most
doesn't.
worthwhile things take more than, take a lot of efforting.
Yes, exactly. And that's part of why efforting isn't trying because efforting includes repetition.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not just a one shot thing.
yeah, yeah.
So, and then finally, celebration, which is not like I'm going to bake you a cake because you cleared the table. Celebration is about noticing and validating and acknowledging when our kids are doing things that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
When we see them actually engaged in that process of efforting. Um, there's been a lot of research on happiness in the last
Yes.
decade you
Yes.
know, whether it's Martin Seligman or Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. And there's just been a lot of research. And what Barbara Fredrickson found, in the positive psychology area, is that ideally there should be three positives for every negative. And she
Please.
researched in all areas, so work and relationship and everything.
Yeah.
And I've gone around, and I'd be curious. We ask your people who are with us, what do they think the ratio is for every one negative comment that your child hears or you hear? How many positives are there?
I know. It's out
No,
of
wait, I said that backwards. Whoop, hello. For
yeah,
every one positive, how many negatives are
yeah,
there? So
yeah.
sorry.
No,
So for every one time you hear something good, like how many negatives do you hear? Because the numbers that I've heard from people are astounding.
yeah.
Particularly, when I talk to teenagers and they're like, "Well, what I say to myself or what other people say to me?" And
That's
I'll
a
say,
very
"Well,
good question.
the total." And what do you think the answer is? I mean,
Oh,
what do you think the range is, Lynn?
yes, it's not good. It's less than one positive for every negative. Gotta be.
Oh, it's one positive for like 30 negatives.
Yes. Yeah. That makes perfect sense, especially in the way that we talk to ourselves. And our kids tend to be more self-critical.
Correct. So, there's what people say to us and then what that, critical part of ourselves says to us too. Like I've named that critical part of myself. I've taken Richard Schwartz to a new level in his work with IFS.
Yes.
Mine is I've named mine Poindexter the perfectionist. And Poindexter
Not a name you hear very often. Good
no,
one.
no, but he's always like this.
Dexter.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. He's letting me know when I overstep all the time, and when I don't measure up, it's even worse.
Oh, I know.
So,
Like
so yeah, and your kids have all kinds um
mhm.
of these their own Poindexters. One of my clients I sat with her yesterday, and she said, I'm gonna call him, mine is loser is loser is loser the leprechaun.
Loser the leprechaun.
Hmm.
Nice alliteration.
Yeah, she's very bright. She's
Yes.
like, yeah, because everything is luck. It has nothing to do with actual skill. And I'm
Oh,
like,
that's profound.
yeah. So I was like,
She nailed it.
so
Good for her. Wow. So we do
yep.
have a couple of comments from Nafton, and
Hmm.
please feel free to put some comments there in the chat. And if you could just let us know where you're from, so that would be cool. But Nafton said parenting challenge with ADHD and ASD is challenging.
Mm,
Self-regulation is challenging. If the parent has ADHD and ASD, it's twice as challenging, especially if the
hmm.
parent was not afforded the awareness and training as a child that would have helped with the 5 Cs. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And then she goes on, from a vantage point of inclusion in society, the five C's should be extended to all parents of all children and to the way we interact with others in invisible disabilities, as well as known cases of disability, like, in school, teachers.
Mhm.
Boy, that would make the world work a lot better for everyone, wouldn't it? If
It
we,
would, and thank you, Nafton, for sharing, and I have to say my mom says that the 5 Cs is for everybody,
yes,
not just for people with ADHD, but she's my mom, so I kind of like, "Thank you, mom." But, I think you're right, I think if if you ha are have, what I call if you're an outside the box thinker,
mhm,
or an alternative learner, or you're scattered yourself, um, you're supposed to live in a world that's not designed for your brain. And
right,
it's not even that it's not designed for your brain, it's not flexible
yeah,
for your brain. And it's very judgmental
yeah,
about your brain. And so, you grew up at it, and if you're a parent of 3 kids, and you sounds like you're
yeah,
busy, and you're from, that you grew up in a time where we didn't understand.
no,
When I was parenting my daughter who's 23, like, we still didn't understand a lot about girls with ADHD. And now there's research that's coming out about women in
yeah,
ADHD. In fact, Attitude Magazine published a big study. And what we're finding is that, what the research is showing, that a lot of women sort of mask or
yeah,
don't know even that they have ADHD. They just think, I'm intense, or I'm kind of wired for sound, is what I used to say about myself. And then I went through perimenopause, and I had horrible emotional regulation. Like, I just lost
yeah,
it at times that were just terrible. And of course my doctor recommended Prozac, but no one ever talked about it because
no.
people don't know.
Yeah, that's when I got my antidepressant, and no one
Mhm.
told me that it was going to take me a year to come off of it. No one explained to me what the brain chemicals were being affected and
Mhm.
how, why, and no one suggested that there were some tools and techniques that I could use to do the metacognition. I didn't even know that word until a decade ago. That would
Mhm.
have helped me not have those thoughts that put me into the depression dip. I didn't. No one gave me any of that, and
And,
so,
and and Prozac is great. Don't get me
oh no,
wrong.
I know.
Like, I
I'm glad you
mean,
had
it's
this
great,
option.
but it doesn't help if you don't have if you don't sort of, if it's just like, well, you're anxious and depressed. But if the context is a little bit greater, like, you're struggling with emotional regulation and verbal control, because
Because
when you lose your estrogen,
yes,
you lose something that's moderated your attention. You lose something that's helped manage your mood, and you lose something that's contributed to your memory. No one tells you that. And I'm a professional. I'm a so-called, expert.
right. And it's biological.
But
Hello.
15 years ago, no one was talking about that.
Mm. No, I had to have complete hysterectomy and ovary removal because of uterine cancer in 2007. So how long ago is that? 15 years ago. And
Mhm.
that threw me right into it, boy. But nobody
Oh
explained
yeah.
how that's going to affect my brain. No one explained any of that.
Right.
And
And
just
that's and
that,
that's
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I just learned that from you. I always learn something from you, but wow, that's a big one.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad you're healthy now.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
so glad you're healthy.
I am
But
good.
I think that this is a going to be a huge issue, and I've decided that every time I talk to people, I'm bringing it up because women need to know. We
Yes.
need to know that what is happening to us. I remember, this is not like, you're not crazy. I remember, this will be 15 years ago or so. I
Mhm.
went to see Dr. Barkley speak, and he was saying that he actually said at the time that having ADHD was like going through menopause. And I was like, what?
Wow.
But he didn't really elaborate much on that.
They're
And now
a
I
red
think
nugget.
I think you would do something differently, but because the research is different and there's so much more information, but,
Good to
that's a
know.
big thing to say.
Good to know. Good to
Yeah,
know for all the people that are listening here. Yes,
right.
definitely. So, we're halfway through, and we're not quite halfway through your 12 ideas, and I
I'm gonna
want to,
talk fast. I'll talk fast.
because they're so good. This one about having to use cues, checklists. I love them.
So I'm just gonna say one thing about this, like, this is your friend. This is
Mhm.
your friend. Alerts, alarms, notifications, the Pomodoro technique, go on the website, download it, have the tomato timer on your computer. There's nothing wrong with cues. And we want to talk with our kids about the difference between a cue and a reminder because a reminder is a nag. Why aren't you doing blah, blah, blah? Or can you please do blah, 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 which may seem like a nag, but it may not be a nag. So we have to help differentiate for them that there's a difference between nagging and cueing. And that's all I want to say about that so we can go on.
So important.
Um,
So very important.
Someone
Yes.
just added something in the thing that said that they,
Your daughter has high anxiety, and then
yes, but it
and
disappeared
disappeared.
on
But
my
that's okay.
thing.
We can address it because we do have a lot of kids. I just think, frankly, that
Mhm.
so many of people with ASD have high levels of anxiety. Um, it's like their amygdala is on fire.
Right, and there is something to be said for what's happening biologically around
Yeah,
that. That the amygdala doesn't actually, that the system in the brain may not actually be wired in a way to help you put
right.
that switch to off, or even to like dim on the dimmer mode,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, in terms of the number six, great idea, move from discombat connection to compassion. We can link that to this question. Um, my daughter's anxiety is debilitating, and for many years. So what happens is that when people are anxious, they are perceiving danger,
Yes.
in
Here.
way when there may be danger or when there may not be danger, but their perception of the danger is distorted, and their response to to this perceived danger is also distorted. And so what happens is that there's a constant um, firing if from the of adrenaline and cortisol, which makes it very hard to settle because there's no sense of safety in the body. And we know that, through Bessel van der Kolk's work and many others,
Mhm.
that are memories that we hold in our body, but there's also that a sense of, cellular tension, in, if I can say that. And so we want to try to help people who are anxious, both figure out what physiological tools they can use to find some calm in their body, because we want to settle the body and
Mhm.
then settle the mind.
That's what,
People often try to say, like, I just got to change, you have to change, stop thinking that way, or it's not going to be such a big deal, or you'll be fine. That will do nothing. What we have to do is actually deal with the physiological aspects, because that's what anxiety is: worried thinking, distorted
mhm.
cognitive, psychological beliefs and
Mhm.
cognitive beliefs, and a physiological reaction. So for
Mhm.
me, if for your daughter, I would really encourage, if she can, maybe do some, sign up online is so great right now. She could do yoga, she
Yes.
could do, any of Kristen Neff's self compassion classes. I happen to know that Kristen Neff is doing a workshop this weekend, starting tomorrow, 3 hours on Saturday, 3 hours on Sunday, through Spirit Rock in California, on self compassion. So
Yes.
we want to try to, help her understand and just be able to do some guided meditation, after, as well as to start to engage with that anxious voice. So, whether it's alternate nostril breathing from yoga, I've I refer to something that I created called triangle breathing, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, and you breathe out for 6, and then you pause on empty, and then you repeat the triangle over and over. And that kind of helps you. So you can do, we can all do it right now. Breathe in for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and pause and do that again.
Oh, I love it.
Sometimes
The image of
sometimes
that is so nice.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so nice, right? I mean, it comes from there's this thing called box breathing, where you
Mhm.
breathe in for 4, you breathe out for 4, you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 6. But that didn't resonate with me
No, the
because
triangle.
it's not a long enough exhale.
Yeah.
And it's that exhale that's so important, and then that little pause when you're round the corner for the next leg of the triangle.
Yeah, and Kristen Neff wrote a good book on all that self-compassion. I mean, she's
Oh,
really
she's
brilliant.
amazing,
Yeah.
and her work is amazing, and if you don't know her work, I really encourage you to check out, her work.
Yeah, my kids, my adult children, I call them kids. I hope that's okay. Ask me, what do you do, when their partner is jacked? And I said something physical. And they looked
Mhm. Yeah,
because you can't reason your way out of the jack, being jacked up.
yeah.
You need to do
I'm just
something.
gonna type in Kristen Neff's name here.
Yeah, it's
There you go.
yeah,
You can't do anything when you're jacked up. The other person, of course, is Tara Brock.
mhm,
I'll put this in here too.
yeah.
And also Jack Cornfield.
Oh
Um,
yes, yes.
they both have Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield have a wonderful like 30-day or a 40-day meditation course on Insight Timer. It's 10 minutes a day.
Perfect.
And these are things that can really help anxious people just start to be able to be with themselves because the problem with anxiety is usually you're just jumping out of your skin.
I call it's the washing machine. The thoughts are
Yeah.
going around so fast you cannot distinguish one thought from the next. And
Mhm.
that's where we need to just leave and go someplace, breathe out anything, whatever you're doing, push-ups, I don't care what it is,
Mhm.
something physical that helps. It will help better than trying to figure it out because your brain wants to figure it out because it loves to solve problems. That's what it's
Yes, it does.
right? And then back to
Right.
your work together for solutions. It's just the collaborative problem solving process that I have here, where we start
Right.
with facts because they're neutral. Then we look at what they're thinking, which I call them that's their steer map, and that's the empathy step. And then we present
Mhm.
ours, but we present it in short, succinct messages because there's just not enough, brain space to process a whole discussion about how you walk to school uphill in the snow both ways. You know, we
Right.
we need to really get succinct and then find the next steps. And as you do this process, you'll find the next steps as you're doing it.
Mhm. I love that. That's fantastic. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah. This
Um,
has made a big difference in our family. I'd love to say we do it consistently, but we're working on that part.
oh, nobody's perfect, right?
Yeah.
We're doing the best we can.
And
So,
thank you for number 8 because you're one of the only people I've found that actually understands what is difficult for parents, why it's difficult.
right. So, what's difficult for parents is we bring our own invisible backpack
Good word.
of our issues, our experiences, our baggage, as it were, with us to our parenting. And even if you've done a lot of therapy, you're going to get kids that somehow like go to
I
the
know,
issue that you
just
haven't exactly worked on yet or
yeah.
you haven't mastered. And, it's unbelievable. I was like, really, my daughter was like, why didn't you do more work before you had us on yourself? When she was a teenager. And I was like, I'd already done like 10 years of therapy.
Yes. Yeah.
How
Yes,
was I
years.
supposed to know you'd come here and you'd like push the invisible red button on the
Yes,
middle of my chest?
yes.
I didn't know that. Um, so we have our own histories and we bring those to our parenting, whether consciously or unconsciously. And so, what we can do is just, try to heighten our own awareness of what's ours and what we're bringing to a situation, and then how is that affecting the choices that we're making in our parenting. And I'm going to tell you, nobody can do this in the height of a like episode. It's something that you get, that comes to you over time, that you learn to say, you know what, I think I'm going to take a little break right now. This is getting too hot for me. We'll
Mhm.
come back, and I'll come back in 15 minutes when I've settled.
I gotta
And
go
your
to the
kids,
bathroom. I'm
yeah,
going to the bathroom.
I'm going to the bathroom. Exactly.
So practical and so real, because it gets us going, and it's better when we're settled. It just is. And then I love
Right.
your acronym for grit. Oh my, this is so
Yeah.
good.
So the thing is, we all have grit.
Yes.
This myth, like, you need to harness your grit and apply it. I'm like, what are you talking about? People who are neurodivergent, people who are who've experienced racism or sexism or homophobia, or any kind of ism. You have grit every day. Every morning you wake up and you pull it together to get out of the house. And so, I'm changing grit. Instead of saying, you need to use the grit you have, I'm like, forget that. Let's just break it down.
Yeah.
So grit, we're going to apply the grit that we have. So we're going to get situated when we have a task. We're going to figure out what we need to do to resist distractions. Do I put my phone away? Do I put all my fun stuff on a different browser? Do I set up the stay on task app that pops up every, 10 minutes to say, what are you thinking about? you know, what am I going to do to resist distraction? What incentives am I going to use to help myself get through a task I don't want to do? So, for example, I have, like 150 emails in my box. Ugh. It takes a lot of um,
Yeah. Stick to
forbearance to
this.
go through them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what I do is I'm going to do 30 minutes. I'm going to set my timer. And at the end of 30 minutes, I'm taking myself
Whatever's
into
done
the
is fine.
glorious sunshine. And
Yeah.
that's it. And maybe I'll do 30 minutes at the end of the day, but I
Yeah.
can't do 150 emails in one time.
No. Mm-mm.
Right.
Mm-mm.
So
Yes.
grit does require executive functioning skills, Nancy, and it's how we apply our executive functioning skills.
Mhm.
So, and then finally, we're going to talk through small steps. So that we just talked through a small step.
Yeah.
I have these emails. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to do a small step, which I feel like I can handle. For some people, 30 minutes might be too much. It might be 5. That's
Yep.
fine. So
Yep.
you want to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
So in order to apply your grit, yes, this works with budding and nurturing executive functioning skills. What do I need to get set up? How am I going to resist the distractions? Okay. What incentive do I want to set for myself to motivate me to
Mhm.
initiate and get started? And how am I going to break down a task into small enough chunks so I don't procrastinate and I can feel a sense of success and sustain my attention and meet my goal?
Yes. Yes. And this all dovetails really well with, I don't know if you're familiar with Piers Steele's The Procrastination Equation, but it's a,
Mm-mm.
good piece of work.
Can
Um,
you type it down? Is it
that is
PIER?
Piers Steele. I think it's Steel. Piers Steele, and he broke down broke down motivation into the four cons parts of it. Four. Anybody that can take things down and simplify it is a genius, as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
It explains the whole thing, and then I will link to that, the the notes I have on him, and other wonderful resources about his procrastination equation in the transcript that you'll
Mm-hmm.
get. Hopefully by Sunday, could be Monday. We'll see how much I can do on the weekend.
I have a couple of downloadables on my website around motivation and
Yes,
procrastination.
yes.
I've also written about it on in my
Oh,
website and in my Psychology Today blog. So I would really encourage people to check those out as well.
oh, they really help because it helps us understand that this is not a character flaw. That there
No.
are elements that we can manipulate to increase or decrease our motivation. And it helps us to understand how ours works. And then we can start talking and figuring out what the thoughts are that are influencing those four elements. And so good to know that listening and figuring out how people think is the key. That metacognition
Hmm.
is really the most helpful way to approach it. And that's how we do it in the art of adulting. So I love um, Smith. Oh, what's her first? Maggie Smith.
Maggie Smith, that's hilarious. That's a
Yes.
very funny gif.
Yeah, yeah. Where we just need to really stop I call it suggesting, advising, and criticizing. And we just need to stop that because nobody wants to hear, none of us do, especially our young adults. Our suggestions don't stick. They just get frustrated with hearing it all. And really, what they just want is us to support them and help them do what they think is the right thing to do.
Yes. So say that again. It was suggesting, and what were the other two things?
Sacking, I call it suggesting, advising, and criticizing. We need to stop sacking them because it literally pulls them down. Suggesting, advising, and criticizing.
I love that.
And start
Um, that's
reflective.
something that I'm learning today. That's great.
Yeah, we have to start the reflective listening process, which I
Hmm.
learned from Dot and Bob Bolton
Hmm.
in their book, Listen Up or Lose Out. And they
Mm.
went all over the world advising um, lots of different corporations on how to help their managers and leaders do better listening. And so, yes,
Hmm.
it also applies to the
Right.
system inside our family.
Yes, reflective listening is so important, and it's very hard to do,
It is.
particularly if you're triggered. Because what I heard you say is blank. Did I get that right? Is there anything else? Really, what you want to say is, "Are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? Kidding me? That's
I know
ridiculous.
that won't work, right?
That's not going to work."
And trying to teach our autistic young adults to do this as well is a challenge because it requires processing the information they're receiving and then bringing it back out again. And sometimes that processing speed takes a while. And that whole habitual, giving us some feedback from an ASD person's perspective is a challenge. That's where the social skills, differences
Course.
happen.
And so, one of the things that we're talking about, we want to stop arguing, is we want things to slow down. We want to slow things down,
Mhm.
because it's hard to process when things are going fast. You're
Mhm.
not able to regulate.
Mhm.
You and your kids, particularly those who are alternative learners, they can't regulate if you're not regulated. So we want that's really the first intervention, which is slow down the process.
Yep. In fact, that we end up with that one on 12, but let's just get to your really important thing. In fact, it's really cool because I used to have screen-free Sundays when my kids were young, and
Mm,
today they're saying, Mama, you were onto something with that. Back then they hated it, but today
mhm,
you are
mhm,
right because there's just too many inputs from screens, and our brains aren't designed to take them all in.
mhm.
So
Yeah.
I love your limit screen time. As a great idea, and help me figure out how to implement this one, will you?
Well, this is where collaboration comes in,
Yes, I couldn't agree
because your kids have some idea of what they need to do on their screen, and there are different types of screen usage. There's what I have to do for school and what I want to do for fun, and how do I um, relax. you know
more.
so we play, we work, we study from the same screen. It's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
And even if we use our phones, we are now like, we touch our phone thousands of times a day. So it's, when we're thinking about screen time, what I think we want to do, if you're a parent, and someone has a question with adult children, and I'll get to that in a minute. But if you're a parent, if you're parenting by yourself or you have a parenting partner, you want to sit down and say, how much screen time, not for school or work, do I want my child to have?
Well, and I think with adult children, it's the same question. You just ask them to answer the question. how much screen
Well, you're
time,
going to ask your younger children the question too.
how much,
In my
screen time
scenario, how
do you
much time do you want? How much time do you think you want to have on your screen that isn't for school?
right?
How
And
much time do you think?
the first question is, how much time are you spending on screens?
Well, that would be a question. That would be my next question. Like, how much time do you think you should have on your screen? Like, how much time do you want to have? And then how much time do you actually have?
Yeah,
Like, what are you actually doing?
yeah,
Where are you going? And then, what you think you'd like, what you want to have, what you do have, and then understanding that whatever you have right now isn't really working because you're not turning your homework in, or your grades are kind of, you know, not where you would like them to be by your own report. Um, we need to do something different. And so the way I think about screens personally is that screens are a privilege.
yes.
The screen time for school is not a privilege because it's part of like doing school. But the rest of screen life, that's a privilege. Like you don't come into the world and like need to have TikTok. Doesn't work that way. Right. So the
Good.
question
Yes,
is like how
yes,
much screen time for fun? And
right.
then, what are you going to do that is a gimme? So every day maybe your kid gets an hour that they get no matter what, unless
Unless,
they violate using screen appropriately,
yeah.
right? So they're up in the middle of they sneak it in the middle of the night, they're
Oh,
not gonna
yeah.
get that hour.
Yeah.
They visit inappropriate sites, they're not gonna get it. They post things that should not be posted, that's gonna affect it. So there are some guidelines, okay? But
Right.
generally, they get their hour. Or I like to keep that for that gimme sort of low. So like 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And then of course, we're trying to get to the 2 hours of fun screen time a day because that's what, let's say that's the number that we all agree on. So then how are we going to get to that number? Oh, well, you're going to earn it in 30-minute chunks. So you come home and you take the dog out, which is your responsibility, and you have a snack, and then you do some homework. And then you get your 30 minutes of your bonus your gimme time. Okay, well, how are you going to get off that 30 minutes of your gimme time? You gonna have a tantrum? You gonna yell at me? If you any do those things, you're not going to get your bonus time. So you get to school on time, maybe you earn 30 minutes of bonus time for that. So you can connect activities and responsibilities to earn screen time
Mhm,
bonus points.
mhm.
So if the baseline is 30 minutes and they want to get up to 2 hours, great. You know, wake up without cursing at me.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get to school on time.
yeah,
That
yeah,
would be each of those could be 30 minutes. Finish your homework and show me that you turned it in. You'll get another 30 minutes.
yeah. And with
Okay.
our adults, then we say, okay, well, what are your ideas? What,
Right.
and then
Right.
we
So
share
with
ours,
adult
right?
correct. So with
Ours.
adult kids, right, with adult kids, what we want to say is um we want to have a sort of we want to zoom out a little bit in the conversation. Like, what do you think the role of screens is in your life? And is that how you want it to be?
Yeah,
How much time are you spending on your screen versus doing things that would be more satisfying to you or make you feel better about yourself? Like the question I always ask adults is like, well, particularly emerging adults, like, well, how do you feel when you
when you
get off of your like when you're on your screen for 30 minutes looking at, Snapchat of what other people are doing or Instagram? How do you feel
yeah,
about yourself?
yeah. And yet, so many of my kids use screens to connect because it seems to be a good place for them to be social. So
Right,
I
but
want to make sure that that works for them. At the same time, I want to warn them of overuse. So we're trying to find the
right.
Goldilocks place.
Exactly. It is a Goldilocks place because what we want to be able to say is yes, I want to have a certain amount of time where I'm connecting with people online. But then I also want to learn how to connect with people face to face. And that's hard for a lot of
Oh,
kids who are on the spectrum and also may have ADHD or a learning disability. Um, and because the distance is safer, it's more comfortable. Nancy's saying that that's how her daughter communicates successfully and socializes because she struggles with face-to-face socialization. So we want to try to slowly help them learn how to do that, and maybe that's just going to a local cafe and ordering something to eat to practice that skill.
oh, the practice is so good, and especially if you can make an occasion or a celebration out of it, it just,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it more attractive because it's
Mm-hmm.
something that is scary. It sets those alarm bells off in their heads, and
Right.
it connects to your last point because if we can if we can maintain our connection with them and describe how we're doing it. I just want you to notice that I'm trying to notice whatever you do
Mm-hmm.
well, and
Mm-hmm.
notice how that makes you feel. And then imagine if you noticed how somebody you cared about was doing something well and told them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the connection, and you alluded to these three, slow down, get low arousal, and be loving, because our kids can sense that. And if we can teach them to do the same thing with their friends, slow things down, try to get to a low arousal, and really project love to your friends, then maybe, if they're thinking about how what they're trying to give away, then the focus on themselves might, get in a better proportion, because mostly they're worried about how they're going to come off. And if we can back away from that and think about how we're going to make the other person feel, sometimes that does help.
Absolutely. And we want to remember is we our kids are not going to necessarily respond well when we say, "Do you notice, like are you aware that I'm noticing when you're doing well?" They're going to be like, "I didn't ask you to do that. What are you
Yeah.
doing that for? Like, don't tell me. Like that ruins the whole thing." So what we want to do is we want to just casually say, "Thanks for cooking dinner tonight. You've been home for 3 months, and I really appreciate it because 'cause I'm working hard. That was very nice. I really, really value that." And, and that's it. We don't wanna get into a process around me noticing you. Instead, we just wanna just offer it up and give it to them because we're gonna be modeling for them how to offer it up
Yeah.
to other people, right? So one of the things that's challenging for kids who are alternative learners is they often lack confidence in
Yes.
their ability to connect with others. They feel like they don't feel good about themselves, or they feel like they don't have enough to offer, or they feel like they don't get it right, or whatever the Poindexter is saying to them in their heads. So what we want to offer them is as much as we can is our love and our support. And so in order to do that, we want to be able to really focus on I observe, I
Mm,
notice.
yes, I
I
see.
notice that when you're on your phone during the day, that by the time dinner comes, you're not necessarily in the best mood. Do you notice that? What do
Mm,
you think do you think there might be a connection? How do
mm.
you feel after you get off your phone being on it for 2 or 3 hours? And then because we wanna ask those kinds of questions that foster metacognition,
Right.
self-awareness,
Right.
and so it feels like we're on their side rather than we're judging them and we're telling them what they're doing wrong.
Right. Because that's the keystone skill that's going to help them move from the emotional childhood to the adulthood that we're hoping them to get to.
Exactly, exactly, and you're gonna stumble, all parents, you're gonna stumble, just expect it,
Yeah.
and the final thing that I wanna leave you with is, you will stumble, that's
Yeah.
cool, we all will, own it, be
Hmm.
accountable, say, "Wow, you know what? I messed up, I'm sorry, I blew it. I know you told me for 3 years, 10 years, or whatever, that you wish I didn't say X. I'm working on it. Sometimes I slip up.
Yes, yes. I'm still a work in progress. Motherhood, doesn't come like the Matrix.
Correct.
I didn't download mothering into my brain on the Matrix. We're learning as we go, and that's what we do. You said you had something. We learn, we grow. There was a wonderful phrase you had in your that resonated with me about that.
I'm not sure what I said,
We
so
grow.
but I think we learn, we grow,
Yes,
and we pivot, you
and we
know? I mean,
yeah.
I think that's really what we have to do, and, we are works in progress. Our kids don't really wanna hear about the work in progress that we are. They just want us to leave them alone.
Yeah.
So, you can say, this is a really annoying thing I do. I'm working on it. I may have to work on this till the day I die. I apologize for that. That's my path in this life.
Yep. Yep. Wow. What a great way to wrap it up. And I just want to let everybody know there you will be sent a link to the replay and the let's see, Lynn C. Davison. Speaking of /blog is where you'll be able to see anytime you come back. That's where you're going to be able to get, and it doesn't require an opt-in. You can just go right to that page, and you'll be able to see this entire Q&A with a transcript and the links at the top to any of the resources that we've mentioned here today.
Thank you, Lynn. And if you would send, maybe we can talk offline. I don't. I'll email you with my phone number, but maybe we can talk offline because I'd love to have a link to this
Mhm.
beautiful session on my Facebook
Oh, perfect.
and post it up on YouTube because it was really so fantastic to talk with you. You're very wise and insightful, and I just am so. Um, Filled with admiration for the work that you're doing. And thank you to everyone who joined us. I really
Well,
appreciate your
right back
participation.
at you, Dr. Saline. And yes, thank you for everybody who was able to come today and who is going to be watching this on the replay. Bye for
Okay.
now.
Bye.